Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-Minute Histories videos. And today I'm in Fells Point on the 500 block of Dallas Street, and we're going to talk about the 5 houses behind me, Douglass Row or Douglass Place. The Douglass comes from Frederick Douglass, who in 1892 came back to Baltimore and built these houses. So the question is, why did he do it? What was going on that almost 30 years after the Civil War, Douglass would come back and build these houses? Let's scratch into that a little bit. First, a word about Douglass. He was born on Maryland's eastern shore, enslaved. At age 10, he was, I guess the term is leased out to a relative here in Baltimore, and really grew up here in Fells Point. He worked as a ship's caulker, those folks who stuff fibers, hemp and other fibers into the cracks of ships to keep them from leaking when they're in the water. Incidentally, we did a video a number of months ago on the caulkers' houses on Wolf Street, where, among other folks, African-American ship's caulkers live. Go check those out. But back to Douglass. As a young man, he got papers from a black seaman and then got on a train in Canton and made his way, basically bluffed his way north to freedom. He escaped from his enslavement here. There was a new plaque, relatively new plaque, commemorating that event at the place where the train station was on Boston and Linwood Streets, thanks to Ray Barr and his colleagues at the Canton History Project. So check that out also. So the question, though, is why did Douglass come back in 1892 and build houses here? First, let's start with why he came to Baltimore, where he had escaped his enslavement. He wrote about a fondness or an affection for Baltimore all his life. Here's what he wrote some years later. He wrote, "Going to live in Baltimore laid the foundation and opened the gateway to all of my subsequent prosperity." And certainly in Baltimore, he worked alongside free black Baltimoreans and enslaved black Baltimoreans and got the spark for his later abolitionist successes. Of Fells Point, he wrote, "I have much interest and affection for this old spot around Fells Point where I first felt that I might be useful in advancing and elevating our race." And so it wasn't just Baltimore, and it wasn't even just Fells Point that he had a fondness for. He had a fondness for this particular block. At age 12, he began coming to what was then called Strawberry Alley Methodist Church. Before being named Dallas Street, this place was called Strawberry Alley. He started coming here to Sabbath school. Of that, he wrote, "Whatever successes have come to me in literature, in statesmanship, in learning the light and inspiration, was first gathered in the old church in Strawberry Alley." So clearly looking fondly back on his time here. In 1891, he comes to visit, now in his 70s, and the church has grown and moved around the corner. It's now called the Centennial African American Episcopal Church, and his old Strawberry Alley church is vacant and apparently dilapidated. The next year, he buys the church from the congregation, and I will say I have mixed emotions about this. He tears it down, and he builds the 5 houses that are standing here today. So the question is, then why did we know why he came here, or at least one motivation for coming here. He was fond of it. But why houses? Why did he build the houses? There are 2 sort of main reasons that are proposed. One is that he was building affordable housing for folks, specifically that. And the second is that he was accumulating wealth to pass on to his family. Let's start with the wealth side of the equation. We know in 1881, so 10 years before he buys this property, he in a speech in Maryland, he said, "We must achieve prosperity and we must leave something. Every dollar laid up is a dollar ahead." So he is clearly thinking about that in 1881. In 1891, he again links property acquisition to the advancement of African Americans. He writes, "One of the curses of our race is poverty. Money is not exactly the root of all evil. We must acquire property and we must leave something." So now, 130 so years later, we in America are struggling with structural racism. And certainly one of the things we're talking about is the very thing that Douglass was talking about in the 1880s and 1890s, and that's how to correct the generational wealth gap where Black Baltimoreans have become so far behind and unable to collect the type of generational wealth that many white Baltimoreans had. That's what Douglass was thinking about, talking about, writing about in the 1880s and 1890s. So he comes here maybe on those motivations. What about the affordable housing side of the equation? He chooses to build alley houses, not great big houses, and he chooses to build rental houses. He very much expects to get rent out of them, but he chooses Strawberry Alley, and we know that that was always a place, and historically had been a place where working class Baltimoreans lived. In a census in the 1850s, before the Civil War, on these couple blocks were 46 Black Baltimoreans, 21 white Baltimoreans, and 1 enslaved Black Baltimorean, all listed their occupations as caulkers and laborers of some sort. So Douglass certainly chose a working class place to build his affordable housing. Mary Ellen Hayward, the Baltimore row house guru, calls alley houses Baltimore's best bargain. So that was likely a motivation as well. Unfortunately, Douglass doesn't get to see much of it. He died 3 years after building the houses in 1893. He was able to leave them to his son, so that generational wealth accumulation happened personally for him, who owned them for a number of years, eventually selling them, I believe, in 1906. Going to wrap up with some recent history. In the 1980s, a few of the residents here did their research and got the row listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and today it is owned and rented by folks of all stripes, and including one property has been recently renovated and works as an Airbnb, decorated of red with Douglass-related themes and African Americana. So pretty neat there. So I'll invite you to come on down next time you're in Fells Point. Take a look at this row and the heritage that it has. Take a look at the marble plaque commemorating its link to Frederick Douglass. And if you see a group of people standing out here looking at these houses, it's pretty likely they're a group on a tour with Lewis Fields, who for 20 years or more has led Frederick Douglass tours in Fells Point and kept his legacy alive. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.